Hello and welcome to SOCF111, Session 10, where we're going to look at conflict management. So a nice quotation from today looks at freedom is actually a bigger game than the power. Power is about what you can control, and freedom is about what you can unleash. So also today there was a nice quotation by Indira Gandhi in respects to conflict that states you cannot shake hands with a clenched fist. So today's session is reflecting on conflict and to introduce strategies for managing conflict. We may be repeating some of the stuff we did last week and reviewing those areas on assertiveness. So today, by the end of the session, it's expected that you should be able to discuss the types and nature of conflict, apply a harm minimisation plan when dealing with an angry client, identify and describe a conflict resolution model, assess strategies for managing a range of client situations, and understand the role of emotional awareness in managing conflicts. This was a very good class exercise to do because there's a lot of class interaction. So I'm going to get you to write down your thoughts and ideas on a piece of paper, which you can use for your reflective journal. So conflict, as individuals with different needs, tastes and views and values, we are bound to encounter conflict. It can flare up over small things such as back fences or national borders, over cleaning up the kitchen or cleaning up the environment. It can involve our most intimate relationships or the briefest of interactions. So when people cannot tolerate others' moral, cultural, religious, political differences, conflict is inevitable and often costly. And that's from a textbook, Everyone Can Win. So the conflict cycle is evolutionary, it's continuing to change. So in that conflict there's some uncertainty. A conflict develops, which leads to a build-up, the crisis. There may be a resolution at that stage or a partial resolution, which leads to an equilibrium where both people have a win-win situation. But it doesn't mean that at a time in the future, uncertainty doesn't develop. So what is conflict? It's a struggle that results in opposing forces coming together and involves all of the following components. Having the perception, cognitively, to see the differences between individuals that appear incompatible. It's a feeling, an emotion, and it contains an element involving that feeling of arousal. It's the action or behaviour that is taken to meet the needs, to interfere with someone else's ability to get their needs met. So, exercise of power, violence, destructiveness, or it may be conciliatory or friendly. So types of conflict are personal conflicts, are conflicts that occur within ourselves. What type of conflicts do you think we may have within ourselves? So it may be that you have a certain opinion, another friend gives you an alternative opinion, and you need to decide in yourself which is the way you want to go. Interpersonal conflicts happen between individuals, and social conflicts are clashes between society and nations, which is war. So activity 10.1 looks at a role play where I'd like you to identify a conflict situation that could occur in therapeutic practice. And I'd like to just look at a client who's angry with their treatment, is not happy. What might happen if one of these problems arises when you are practicing? So just take a moment now to write down how you might deal with this conflict. And The student handout 10.1 looks at the nature of conflict, and that conflict creates a need for change, and it often occurs as a result of change. Conflict should not be viewed as abnormal, but undesirable at that stage, but it should be constructive and growth producing. So how can we avoid conflict and eliminate the change? We don't want to do that. We want to manage how effectively we can deal with the situation and produce a positive outcome for all parties to that win-win situation. So usually the situation involves each person stating their view, their needs, their feelings, listening that both parties feel their story has been heard, and listening with empathy. Mutually defining the problem, generating a number of possibilities, assessing the advantages and disadvantages of each situation, plan the solution in terms of who will do what, when and where, implement the solution and have an evaluation period. So we will go over that again. So I just want you to think about how you dealt with the situation. So conflict includes the following, where you want to reduce the harm, conflict resolution itself, and looking after yourself. So it's always good to have a plan for harm minimisation for yourself and others. So within the environment of your clinic, there will usually be an emergency or critical incident procedure. What's going to happen in the case of an emergency or a client who's angry or aggressive? So it's helpful to know those procedures, step them out, because you may need to use them in the future, and that includes fire, armed hold-up, other emergencies. So in your clinic, have a planned route for escape where you can get out of that room if you need to. Don't be sitting behind a desk in the corner of a room where you can't escape. If possible, avoid being the only practitioner in the clinic, so that in the event of evening or new patients coming in, you're not there by yourself and unfamiliar with what could happen. And it's probably useful not having objects in the room that could be used as weapons, so something that could be used to cause harm or injury, and that probably includes things such as knives, letter openers, things that can penetrate. Other things you can have in your room is nice lighting, nice furniture, so it feels comfortable in there, even when someone comes in and they are aggressive. Just the room being gentle may calm them down. So for the person, from your perspective, that they know the boundaries that you've established. There may be on their admission form or their client contact form some of the procedures that occur in the clinic that they need to pay before they leave. There's no billing sent to their house. A future appointment will cost this much. And no techniques for managing someone who may be angry or elevated in their mood, or may have a drug and alcohol issue. One of the things we looked at today is being aware of clothing, such as scarves or jewellery, that may restrict movement in and out of a building, but also that someone could hang on to, and that can occur. So harm minimisation in the event of someone who is angry, who is a patient. One of the things that is useful is to identify and know your feelings, whether you're feeling scared, angry, at ease. So know that that will occur, that's normal and natural, that you're on guard. You acknowledge that the person is angry, and you say, look, it appears that you are angry, so you're validating their feelings. And you're communicating acceptance and concern for that person. And you try and identify the problem or how you can help. Because in the end, that's what they've come there for, is some help. During the event and dealing with any angry client, it's best to use simple, plain, direct language. Your voice should be at a suitable pitch, not too loud and not too soft. And be aware of you've got some personal space, take a step back from them, have open body language, and appear that you understand what they're saying. So gently nodding your head, respecting their personal space as well. And that your voice and non-verbal communications is congruent. So you're not saying, I can help you with your arms crossed. So during the event and dealing with an angry client, some things which are probably not useful to do is react in fear. So instead taking a time to calm down, take a breath and acknowledge your feelings. Don't hurry, threaten, abuse, insult or patronise the person, as they will see that as false. So you want to look at improving their self-esteem rather than challenging it. And you don't want to put them in a corner where they feel they can't get out, or touch them, which may respond in them becoming increasingly angry or could harm you. And you want to remove yourself from a situation where you feel you can't control it or it's escalating. And that's when you may wish to call the police or security if you have that in your building. So Geldhard and Geldhard looks at dealing with the angry client, and they identify that angry clients do need to dissipate their anger and then change their behaviour patterns and thinking. So maybe just the ability to get that information out will calm them down. So there's different ways that you can work with these people. You can help them to discuss what's happening with them. How are you feeling? Tell me how you feel. Only if they're not overly violent or dangerous. Remember to keep yourself safe and refer on as appropriate. You can help them to relax. Say, look, why don't we take 3 deep breaths together, and that may just help you feel a bit more relaxed, a bit more centred, and we can talk about the situation. Where there you can help them to change their thoughts and behaviour, and they will be appreciative of this because they don't want to be in a heightened state. So we can help them change thoughts and behaviours by recognising what those physiological cues are. So we see them coming down the corridor, they look angry, they might have been waiting for an hour. We don't know what's happened before they got there. Has someone been sick? Have they had a car accident? Have they got financial difficulties? So we want to have an avoidance of an angry outburst. So we want them to stop and just take time out, to step back from the situation. And again, as I said, you can take some deep breaths with them to ask them, let's just do this, to just centre yourself. And there are other things at other times that you can do, including relaxation and physical exercise. So what happens? What's going to be the decision? So if you do nothing, there can be problems with this later on and can involve aggression, and they're becoming aggressive and you becoming non-assertive. If you challenge them, they can be more aggressive. And if you're assertive though, you're looking for a solution for the patient, but also that you feel good about what you're doing. So we looked previously at those traditional conflict resolution outcomes. So win-lose, one of the parties will lose. where the other person gains the upper hand. The win-lose, where both people don't end, and may lead to feelings of annoyance that there wasn't an outcome. And the win-win, which is what we want, which allows both parties to feel they have achieved all their goals, it's mutually satisfying, some problem solving has occurred, and a relationship has developed. There's no attempt to control any other person, and it can take a lot of time and energy. So the need for strong communication and interpersonal skills is of utmost. Can you think of a situation where you've been in where there's been a win-win? How did you feel? You went away feeling happy? So this is just a visual representation of those resolution outcomes. And we want to be in the nice blue zone, win-win, being assertive. So in conflict resolution, communication is extremely important. And we want to build with that person trust, rapport, some empathy, that we understand their situation, that we're giving them unconditional respect, we're preserving their dignity, we're actively listening, and there's honest self-expression that we can say how we feel about the situation, thoughts, and also obtain their thoughts. And we're checking their perception. How do you see this? How do you feel about this? And they're assertive, and you're using I statements. So you're not just saying, you did this, you did that. So the importance of assertiveness in conflict resolution is the ability to express those feelings and exercise your own rights without interfering with the rights of others. So you can communicate assertively and say, I feel this. It encompasses behaviour, feeling, and the effect. So you want to use the state model. So it's specific what you want, the behaviour you want to draw the attention to, the trigger, the affect or the feelings of how you feel, the target, the desired outcome, and the effect, the desired change. I'll use an example of a common situation and a scenario that I've heard is a partner who does a behaviour that is annoying. So what you want, look, I'd like you to stop, if you can, that behaviour of nail biting because it makes me feel irritated. If you stop, your fingers will be better and you'll be able to have manicured hands. And that's just a quick example. So in that communication and talking to someone, you're going to pace, not rush. You might match or mirror their body language or gestures, give them some personal space. The tone of voice, you want it to be gentle but firm, and use language that they can understand. You may help to lead them to move forward with their behaviour change and introduce new aspects and ideas so that the person follows. And one of the things we tend to say is but. So we say something positive and then we say but, which actually refuted what we've just said. So instead of that, we can say, I'd like to help you, and I'm finding it difficult with you yelling. You could also say, I'd like to help you. Can you please decrease the tone of your voice so I'm not able to help you when you're yelling? So you're focusing on the problem, not the person. You're annoying or you're aggressive. And you're looking for some points of agreement. So again, that win-win situation. So in conflict resolution, or if you're involved in a conflict situation between two other people, either way, before the process, how do you feel about the situation? What are the major problems? What needs have to be met? What are the rights and responsibilities of the other person? And what maybe led to this? So, why are they annoyed? Have they been waiting an hour? Have they got financial issues? And how might you have contributed to the situation? So, you were running behind or late back from lunch. So what type of resolution are you looking for? Do you want to get them in and out? What are you prepared to offer as a resolution? Have you thought about this? And you want to look at dealing with any strong emotions. So before the situation begins, so saying, well, look, you appear angry. What's that about? And that everyone involved in the conflict resolution is aware of the process and they agree to working through the step-by-step process. So during the process, information is gathered from both people's point of view by a third party. Each person states their point of view, their needs and their feelings, and both parties listen to the other, considering their story, being unjudgmental, mutually defining the problem as they arise, and looking for win-win options. And you can generate a number of possible solutions by brainstorming what outcomes each party would like. And you may do this on a whiteboard or just on a piece of paper. So you're assessing the disadvantages and the advantages of each solution. You're selecting the solution that represents the best alternative to solving the problem, and plan a solution in terms of who will do what, where and when. So you're having a timeline that each party can take away. Once the solution's been implemented, then you want to have an evaluation point, because someone may not be happy with the solution at evaluation and it may need to be repeated. Someone may in that party have hidden agendas or may be sabotaging the conflict resolution process. So some difficult situations will occur with our clients. So there's some things to consider. What are your rights and responsibilities as a practitioner? What are the rights of the other person? What did you both wish to achieve as an outcome? What things do you have in common? And how would you say and do things to achieve the desired outcome without blaming the other person? So what do you hope to get out of this? What would you see as a resolution to this? I would like to see, so it's clearly identified. How will I handle my emotions? Will I be tearful? Will I be angry? Have I removed the desire to punish someone from my suggested solutions? Well, my solution is you're going to do this, this and this, which is going to be uncomfortable for them. And have you created new opportunities as a result of this situation? And what strengths have you noticed as you work through this? Maybe you know you're good at identifying your emotions. What have you understood about yourself and maybe about that client? So they are sensitive. They need time to discuss the issue. They don't want to be rushed. So activity 10.2, I'd like you to do, and you can press pause if you need to, but discuss on a bit of paper a situation which you may encounter. So I'd like you to think about a client who may inappropriately have physical contact with you. So you may be doing a massage or acupuncture or an assessment of a client of the opposite sex who's laying down, or even sitting in a chair, and they put their hand on a part of your body. What would you do? What things might you say to them? Some of the things that you could consider is saying, I feel uncomfortable with that. Now let's get back to the situation. And what would happen if you were massaging or providing a treatment and a patient becomes sexually aroused? You have the right to end that treatment, ask them to come back at another time, or see someone else if you feel uncomfortable. But identifying that that's inappropriate. And that person may be aware or may not even be aware of what their behaviour is. So, on a piece of paper, write down what your response might be to a client who says, would you like to go on a date with me? You find them very attractive, you are single. What would you say? So you would have the option to say, I'm sorry, legally I'm not allowed to date someone who is a patient. It's very nice that you asked me. Let's get back to our discussion. What else have you come up with? Maybe you'd like to share that on the loop. What about a client who is under the influence of drugs or alcohol? What would you do? Would you see them? Would you treat them? Can you treat them if they're under the influence of drugs and alcohol? Can they consent to that treatment? And now perhaps I'd like you to look at some situations that you may face if you're working in isolation. So if you're working from home, what about difficulties in working from home? Car parking, people knowing who's coming to your house? Can patients be confidential coming to your house? What about people who are neighbours asking who's coming to your house? What are they there for? Family members wanting treatment from home. People using your bathroom, your house, having access to your private life. What about the perceptions of other people, practitioners, doctors? They may think, oh, well, they can just set up at home. They're not a health practitioner. Or have they got insurance? These are all the things that people may think. What about working as a sole practitioner in a clinic, at the front of a shop? It's just you. You've got to deal with the building maintenance, the lease, other business owners around, employees. You might need advertising. Other practitioners who are nearby may not understand what you do when you first set up. So a lot of people are going to be thinking things. So one of the best ways, I think, is to have a leaflet about who you are, what you can do, so it's clearly identified in writing to other people who may have contact with you to know what you do without assuming. And this is certainly appropriate for doctors' surgeries, allied health physicians, so that you can produce evidence that you are a qualified health professional who does specific items. And you would like to be able to refer to these doctors or allied health professionals if you needed to. And one of the things that I recommend is having a morning tea for these people, going to their workplace, discussing with them, especially GPs who are so used to having educational sessions from pharmaceutical reps, so they actually understand a bit more about what you do. And taking food is always a good gesture for GPs. So what about some of the difficulties you may encounter with relationships with suppliers and distributors or other manufacturers? They don't know you, you're just setting up. You've got to set up agreements with them. It's timely. How can you get your stock there fast? How long will it take? And this is an interesting one. So you find that there's a medical practitioner near you who is very sceptical of natural medicine, but runs a very busy clinic. You want to put some literature in their office and they don't want to, or even in the waiting room. So the first stage would be to talk to the receptionist, get a bit of an idea about the clinic, talk about what you do. The receptionist usually will talk to the doctors, try and arrange a meeting or a lunch where you can then talk about what you do, your qualifications and your specific skills, because they may not be aware, and that you would really like to be able to refer to them, and if they wish to, they could refer to you for these specific things that you do. So you become non-threatening, you're just providing advice about what you can do. Hopefully, then there's a win-win situation. So emotional intelligence now. We're used to hearing about intellectual quotient. Now we're looking at the ability to recognise emotions in oneself and others and to manage those emotions effectively. So the more we're aware of the way we think, the way we feel, the way we act and the way we behave, gives us more insight to ourselves and how we interact with others. So it's composed of the ability to perceive emotions, understand, manage, use emotions for creativity, or to look at adaptive ways of thinking. There is a site where you can do your emotional intelligence test. It's free and it's worthwhile doing to see just how emotionally aware you are and how you learn as well. So there's 4 branches of emotional intelligence, and this model identifies 4 factors in emotional intelligence, and they are the ability to perceive emotions, to use emotions to promote thinking and cognitive awareness, to understand the emotions that we perceive in a variety of meanings, and the ability to manage these emotional as part of our emotional intelligence overall. And there is a handout on emotional intelligence. There's a link to an emotional intelligence site. So this is the emotional intelligence plan, where we have self-awareness and recognition, some self-management regulation, some social awareness, and the ability to develop relationships with others to help with change and conflict. So it's about self-awareness, self-confidence, and that transparency. So activity 10.4, what I'd like you to do is work through how you measure your emotional intelligence using this test. Write down the numbers between 1 and 9, 1 and 10, sorry, and note your responses. If your responses are mostly in the B column, they're reflective of a strong emotional intelligence. So how did you do? Do you think you can change how you deal with your own and others' emotions? How may you go about this? Write this down for your learning activity for today's session. Do you think that our emotions are a set from when we're young, a social environment? Can we make them change through more self-awareness of ourselves, exploring ourselves? I think we can. And I think the more we study the psychology of our mind or ourselves, are we able to find out more about us to be able to deal with others more effectively. So activity 10.5 looks at conflict resolution and emotional intelligence. So think back to a situation where you were in conflict with someone. What was their perspective when you were answering these questions? Remember to look at it from the other person's point of view. What was the issue? What caused it? What are you feeling? How would you describe the event? What would you like to have done to resolve the conflict? Is it easy to look from someone else's point of view? We don't really know what they were thinking, how they were feeling, but we may have some idea. So just revision some of those harm minimisation strategies to consider before a difficult situation. We looked at planning, being aware of what may precipitate issues with the patient or client, having strategies to deal with aggressive patients in emergencies, how a conflict resolution process will begin, what is the process? It's a process where you want both parties to win, and know that it's solution focused and it's exploring the options and solutions from both sides, and which are going to be amicable, workable and timely. And what communication skills are essential when resolving a conflict. So taking time, breathing, owning your emotions, not becoming angry, listening, active listening for the person and having empathy and showing respect. We know that emotional intelligence can play a part in conflict resolution, so the more that we're aware of ourselves and the way we react, we can control our behaviour. So thank you for being with me today. Look forward to seeing you next week.